Good evening. It's good to have everyone here tonight, and we welcome those that are watching online when they get a chance. We will open the night with prayer. Lord, we thank you so much for the opportunity for us to get together. And Lord, I know we constantly say this, but we are so blessed in that we have the freedom to do so when we want and where we want. We just pray, Lord, that will continue here in this country, even though we know that it's under assault on a daily basis. We just pray, Lord, that you will keep your protective hand over our rights to get together as Christians and fellowship as church family. Lord, we thank you for the good weather. We thank you, Lord, for all the blessings that you are bestowing upon us. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, we'll jump right in tonight. It's funny how things are. They get real hot in one place for a little while, and then everything just kind of continues there, and then something else gets a little hotter. But the temperature is going up all the time on a total is the thing. It used to be that things would heat up somewhere, and then they'd kind of cool off, and then they'd warm back up here. That's not the case anymore. These things are heating up. They stay hot, and they just get a little bit incrementally higher all the time. I'd like to start out tonight by reading out of the book of John, chapter 16, verses 12 through 15. And this, of course, this is Jesus talking as recorded by John. And starting with verse 12 of chapter 16, he says, I have many things to say unto you, but ye cannot bear them now. Howbeit, when he, the Spirit of truth, the Holy Spirit, is come, he will guide you into all truth. For he shall not speak of himself, but whatsoever he shall hear, that shall he speak. And he will show you things to come. He shall glorify me, for he shall receive of mine, and shall show it to you. All things that the Father hath are mine, therefore I said, I that he shall take of mine shall show it to you. And what it ties into what Pastor and Bishop have been talking about so much lately. And that's that we need to be in the spirit mode and rely upon the Spirit and pray that the Spirit will keep us from being deceived. I'm going to point out tonight, things are not what you can't believe what you see. And I'll give you an example of that here in a little bit. But it's not just in one area, it's across the board. And so I just want to impress on everyone to employ what Pastor and Bishop's saying, that you need to work really hard to being in the spirit of things and not just relying upon your own physical abilities to know and understand. And be slow to jump to conclusions on what you see or hear. You're going to have a handle on this, because it's really going to get bad. Biggest news tonight out of the Mideast is where I always start, is Iran. It appears that Biden must be pretty close to brokering a deal with Iran to, quote unquote, and it's almost laugh out loud, limit their nuclear capabilities. There's a lot of shuttling taking place in the Mideast and in Washington, D.C. of diplomats. And it would appear that somehow or other that he's putting a deal together. From what I can understand, it's Iran will agree to, well, we're not going to go any further than we are now. Well, that's what the last one, of course, was all about. And of course, they're so close now to producing nukes. The IAEA, which is the agency that inspects for the nuclear facilities around the world, they were in there in Iran supposedly investigating a claim that someone had said, well, you guys have already got 90% enriched. And so they went into this one, I think it was Nance area, to do an investigation. Well, of course, Iran just lies, 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 lies. The interesting thing is they found some 83% enriched uranium. They have a bunch of 60% enriched, which they don't need because they keep saying all this is just for nuclear power. We're just going to develop nuclear power. Well, you don't need that kind of enrichment for nuclear power. It's only for weapons that when you start enriching the uranium. Lo and behold, you end up, or IAEA comes up and says, oh, we're closing the investigation. We didn't find anything. It's over. So now Biden's going to come out and so he's going to make a big deal. This is, I'm estimating this or prognosticating. I'll get it right in a minute. Yeah. He's going to come out and say, oh, look what I've done. I've got Iran to limit. And of course, what they're going to limit, they'll say, oh, yeah, we're not going to go any further with what we're doing. We'll stop where we're at. And Biden's going to lift the rest of the sanctions that's on them. And the thing with it is the sanctions haven't done any good. You look at where Iran is today versus where they were 2 years ago when Biden took over. They've just blown, it's just been like a big bomb go off in how they have advanced in everything. They are advancing around the world. Their business is good. They're doing a great deal. The people are the ones that's suffering. The government itself is not because they're doing business as usual. In fact, have grown a great deal. Their influence in the world, we've seen it in South America and Venezuela. Their stature in the Mideast has gone back up. We talked about here a few weeks ago that Saudi Arabia had started diplomatic relations with them again. There's more and more countries that are coming around, and the reason being is because Biden walked away from Afghanistan and left a void. And it's going to be kind of like, when we left Afghanistan, Biden was saying, oh, well, we left it in the hands of the Taliban. We're going to be able to work with them. The Taliban's fighting with Iran now over water, using American weapons that, of course, we left, I forget how many billions of dollars of weapons and equipment there. Taliban, as soon as we were gone, we haven't talked about it in a few weeks, but they put the Shias put the Sharia law back, and the women suffer. It suffered terrible. And so it's going to be the same thing over again this time. He's going to tout, oh, well, we're working with the Iranians. Well, the Iranians are liars and killers, and they want to eliminate the United States and Israel. They say so about every week. So, yeah, but Biden wants to do business with them, and he's going to make a big deal about it. One thing that's known, like I said, they have enriched uranium up to at least the 83% level. The other thing is satellite. I saw some satellite pictures this afternoon that out in one of their desert nuke sites, they are obviously excavating a great deal, and what they're doing, they're digging deeper into the earth so that they can get away from the bomb. There are what they call bunker busters, bombs that will be dropped and penetrate deep in the earth before they go off and then create a lot of damage, but they can only go to so deep. So they're putting their stuff back in deeper. There is some talk about, it looks like maybe somehow or other Biden administration is blackmailing the Israelis to accept whatever deal's coming. I haven't got a lot of detail on that, but the Israelis have been kind of quiet on all this. That's the reason it tells you something's getting ready to happen. As far as the United States announcing something, it's all gone quiet. And so something's on the table. Talking about Iran, they are converting. Here's what's happened with warfare. It's been interesting to watch this. Warfare has changed so much with the Ukrainian war. If you notice, they're using more and more and more drones. They've gone to smaller packages that can carry a potent load. And Iran now, they've become pretty much expert in this in some areas. That's why one reason Russia's using Iranian drones. They're buying them from them. That's what they're launching against Ukrainians. The Iranians also are perfecting water drones. These are small, unmanned vehicles on the water that can go out and poke a hole in the side of a ship. And they're hard to defend against. That's the reason the drones have come to be so popular. They're cheap. You can launch them easily. A man can launch a drone with a small warhead by himself close to the battlefield. These little boats that's on the water, they're just controlling. It's just like playing video games is what they're doing. They're sitting watching a screen and guiding this thing. That's the war has changed so much towards that's what's being done. But showing you how the juxtaposition of countries are so different. The UAE, there's a group called it's a maritime task force that's in the Mediterranean and the Red Sea and the Gulf. That was a joint group of Israel, United States, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and all of them to protect the waterways over there because it's so, the waterways are so important for supplies over there, especially oil. Well, UAE pulled out of it. They're not part of it anymore. And UAE and Iran's getting close together. So you're seeing all this juxtaposition of countries lining up with different friends than what they've had over the past, and it's because the United States backed out of the Mideast and left a big void. It's interesting tonight, Iran now has the vice president's seat at the UN. How about that? And that's back to this thing that as member states, they have the opportunity to have an officer in place. It rotates a year at a time. But yeah, Iran now has a VP seat at the UN. Let's see. Like I talked about, Iran's made a complete turnaround since Biden's been in charge in all areas except their human rights record's still terrible, and they're still persecuting their people and hammering their people. But they've got an iron grip. We really thought there for a while that the protests that were taking place there in country in Iran this last year, you've heard Bishop talk about it with the gentleman that we had here from Armenia. It looked like there was going to be the people might rise up and overthrow, but that's not happened. And it looks like they've still got an iron fist on top of them. Some news that just came in just as I was walking out the door. Israel has told Egypt that Hamas and the jihad group that's in Syria and Lebanon are planning a major attack on the north side of Israel. And Israel is telling Egypt, we're going to take care of this problem. And probably one reason that is, that's right, Egypt's right there on the border with that too. And basically what they're doing is telling Egypt, we're going to do something, you need to probably stand aside and watch. So that just happened just here a couple hours ago. So we'll see what happens. The Israelis are in continuous threat practice. They've got just every time you turn around, they've got an exercise going. Of course, as you remember in Israel, they're a volunteer force. They're a reservist force. They don't have a very, very large military that's all they do every day is play military. They have reservists, and they're forced. That's one of the big things we talked about in here a few months ago. Some of the Orthodox are not required to have military public service. That's a hot rub point over there right now between the left and right governments. But anyhow, that being said, they keep these reservists going all the time, keep exercises going all the time to keep their people fresh, because they're not military every day. They're military when they're called in. And so they've got one going on now called Iron Fist. I picked up something that was kind of interesting. It was just a little side note somewhere. They have, and it ties in, and that's why it doesn't surprise me on this Israeli telling Egypt that they're going to do something on the north side. They've been telling their people on the north side of Israel that you need to prepare to go into your bunkers quicker and stay longer. So they're alerting their people to the fact that something may happen too. So evidently, Israel has some intelligence that says that something's going to happen on the north side. And remember, Iran's responsible for all this. Iran funds, provides the munitions, provides the rockets and everything. It's going to come in out of Lebanon and Syria. They're all Iranian. So that's something that we need to keep an eye on. Let's jump up into Europe. EU war there in Ukraine. I just heard when I was coming in at 1800 our time, 6 o'clock our time, Russian bombers, a large fleet of Russian bombers is in the air heading for Ukraine. So probably Kiev's going to get hit pretty hard. They've already, here's what's happened. Everything that's been predicted, or anything, the ones that I follow, the predictions, I tell you guys in here how I think the Ukraine war is going on based on the people I listen to. All that's happened. Bakhmut fell, went to the Russians. We kept saying Russia was going to take Bakhmut. The Ukrainians were not going to keep it, and it fell. Russia's been moving steadily forward. I think out of an act of desperation, the Ukrainians probably really, they did two things that really misstep. One, they tried to kill Putin, or while they thought he was at the Kremlin, they were going, they launched that. We talked about that 2 weeks ago. Well, then they launched a bunch the other night against Moscow. Well, that's a big mistake. Yeah. Russia responded by going ahead and thumping Kiev. Interesting thing. Our Patriot system that takes all the missiles down and the protection and everything, Russia took sucker out. Our Patriot system's not invincible. And Russia said, when they told us, the United States, you can send them over there, we'll just go take them out. And they just took one out. So they're probably going to, they just took that Patriot system out 2 or 3 days ago. I'll be very surprised tonight if these bombers that's in the air don't go to Kiev and really cause some damage tonight. Russia's advancing in almost all the area where they had stopped. They are now advancing into central Ukraine, many areas. And basically what it is, Kiev or Ukrainians are trying to show that they've still got some fight. And they do. I mean, don't fault the guys on the ground. They fight. But here's the interesting thing. Ukrainians' #1 military man, Russians killed him. He's gone. The Ukrainian minister of intelligence, the top intelligence guy, they took him out the other day too. So you can start seeing Russia's just picking them apart. In my mind, that's what it looks like. How long this can go on, don't know. But I still advance the theory that I'm following, that there's no way Ukrainians will stand up to Russia on this. We didn't think that from the beginning. If you go back to what we talked about after this war started a year and a half ago, I was anyhow saying at that time, based on the people I follow, I'm no military expert, but I follow some what I think are experts, and they were saying then there's no way this Ukraine can win this. It's not going to happen. So, and that appears to be what's happened, what's going on. At the same time, there's some trouble back in Kosovo and Serbia. The NATO sending a battalion in because that's firing up again. Mike was there. And so, there's other areas that's going to flare up out of this as time takes place. Could you give me some water, please? There's other areas that's going to pop up. The reason being, EU's really split. It was interesting that here a week or 10 days ago, the Ukrainians got caught planning to blow up the Hungarian gas pipeline. Well, Hungary's a member of NATO, okay? And Hungary all along in this battle with Ukraine has been the one that's just like NATO was going to send another, I forget how many $100 million, and Ukrainians stopped it, or the Hungarians stopped it through NATO. And the reason being, Orban, who's the prime minister of Hungary, he's been a Russian advocate at times over time, but he's common sense person, and he realized same thing we just talked about. There's no way Ukrainians coming out of this, so why are we throwing all this money in there? Excuse me. Thank you, dear. Why are we keep doing what we're doing, funding this thing and killing a lot of Ukrainians? So Kiev, out of Kiev, Zelensky, they've been at odds with Hungary all through all this, of course, because Hungary's been a fly in the ointment for them. Well, they were going to blow up their gas pipeline. See, Hungary has a gas pipeline from Russia. They buy their gas from Russia, have for years. Well, the Ukrainians were going to blow it up. And so that really fired things up over there. The EU government itself just seems to be really fractioned right now. It's just, they're just not getting along. They want to vote Sweden and Finland into NATO, and Hungary's been in the middle of that, saying no way. And Turkey's been involved in this. It's just, you just can't see any way that it's going to work. Question?
Have you heard anything about, I guess I just heard last night, but somehow that whole thing confuses me, you know, and, but anyway, this one was, there was one more country that needed to join NATO to form or reform the original biblical Roman Empire.
Okay.
Have you heard anything?
No, the question was, for those at home, Marcy said that she had heard that there needed to be one more country join into the European Union or to NATO.
NATO, I think.
Okay, and NATO to reinstate the Europeans country that was under the Roman Empire.
Mm-hmm.
I have not. I'll look that up though. I'll check on that. I've not heard that. So
somehow that is significant with
okay.
regards to.
And the reason that's significant for some people is that they keep trying to tie the EU, the countries that come together and everything, into being the Revelation prophecy of the 10 nations under the old Roman Empire that's going to come in. Don't know. Okay. I have been more leaning to the fact that there's going to be 10 nations, but it's going to be 10 regions around the world rather than specific countries. And that's why I think, you know, you look at here in this part of the world, it would be Canada, the United States, and Mexico could possibly be one unit of that 10. South America could be another unit, and I don't know. But there's different theories on it, nobody knows. But they're always trying to put the numbers of the European countries together to match biblical prophecy. That's been going on for years. I'll check it out, though. Talking about, you know, NATO's been stepping up supplies into this all along, and Russia just keeps stepping up their side. Interesting side note, saw a video today of a weapon that we use that's basically an anti-tank weapon that's shoulder carried, one of these little shoulder carried jobs. Guess who was wearing it? One of the cartel members in Mexico. The only place it could come from was Ukraine. It's one of the models that we would have been given to the Ukrainians. It's in Mexico on some cartel militia's back. And it goes to the fact, they tried to show some, try to make some accountability in the Ukraines that the stuff we were sending over there was staying there and wasn't being sold. And everybody was saying it's all being sold. A lot of those guys, what was it? There was like 10 members of the Ukrainian government that got fired because they were making money off the war. And what it was is a black market. We've been sending all this stuff over there, and they've been selling it to, evidently, Mexican cartels buying some of it. So it's just amazing. But yeah, it was on this guy's back. He was marching down the road, had it strapped right over his shoulder. So really interesting. Let's talk about China for a minute. Xi Jinping, the big thing coming out of China right now is Xi Jinping is urging all parts of the country to step up their national security system. And that's the system where they track their people. It's not about defense against outsiders or something, but it's their tracking system of their people. He's pushing it. He wants it done sooner than what it was supposed to be. I think, if I remember, they were supposed to have a complete system by like 2025. I believe that was their date. I'd read this a year and a half or so ago. I'd have to look it up. But he's pushing to get it done quicker. And as far as South Pacific, haven't heard much the last few days other than the Chinese are doing what we used to do all the time during the Cold War, go out and intercept a ship or go intercept an airplane. They had what they did. It was kind of funny reading this article. They was thinking like this was some big new deal. It's not. We had an RC-135, which is an electronics countermeasure aircraft. They fly along. They're listening to radio transmissions and satellite and taking pictures and all this stuff. One of the F-16, Chinese F-16, they have a 16 too. He come in and he did a high-speed pass right in front of the airplane. Well, they talking about how it was such a dangerous maneuver and everything, and it is to an extent. But what he's trying to do is create when the airplane goes through high speed, he creates vortex off his wings. Well, that turbulence can go in the engines and shut the engine off. It'll flame out. We used to do it all the time. We did it all the time during the Cold War. And it didn't quit until the Cold War quit. But they're back doing stuff like that again. But they're keeping the pressure on Taiwan. There's no doubt about that. Excuse me. Oh, well, let's talk about Satan being busy. And then we'll move into some stuff here at home. I've got several things to talk about there. The World Health Organization moved ahead. They had their meeting in May that we talked about in here, where Biden's going to sign an executive agreement that gives them authority to manage our health care in case of a pandemic. They will have another meeting in September, and then it's due to start functioning in January. I mean, and nobody's saying anything about it. It's amazing. You've got to look in the news to find anything about this, and this is a big, big deal, because I tell you, here's how they're going to, in one of their statements, I read one of their, that's what came out in May out of this meeting, was they had all their definitions and mission statements and everything put together. Well, one of their mission statements says they intend to control our health through humans, animals, and earth, meaning that they're going to control health pandemics that are like COVID. All right, we had COVID was a pandemic. Had the world needed to respond, they're going to be in charge. All right. Now you say, well, how about animals? Well, let's say that avian influenza, which killed all the chickens and turkeys this last year, and they've had it in other parts of the world, because the wild geese and ducks scatter that every time they migrate. Okay, let's say that that starts jumping to humans, which it has, but not on a large scale. They've had people that's come down with avian flu. It's a H5N1 or something is the code on it. People that flocks that are, there was one in China. There's been one or two here in the United States. But people that tending their chickens picked up the flu. There was a case in China, never did read much more on it, that seemed to kind of intimated that this gentleman that was working the chickens came down with the avian flu, which he did, and his granddaughter or something picked it up too. Now, I didn't hear any more about it. But anyhow, that can happen. So, you know, we know all the time that some of these diseases in animals jump to man.
Is this a serious?
Yeah, it could be very serious, depending on how it mutates, and depending on who's working on it in the lab and lets it loose. That's a bigger question. But anyhow, that's how. So they're going to have the responsibility not only if humans break out, but let's say that we have an animal problem. They're going to be in charge of that. And the third thing that's coming, which you haven't probably heard anything about yet, they're going to declare that there is a climate pandemic. See, and that ties in, that's coming. I'll guarantee you that's coming. And that's why this mission statement's kind of important, is that they say they will control health through humans, animals, and earth. All three of them, three biggies. And the earth thing is a climate thing, which we know now is becoming the new world religion. So thought I'd point that out. Like I said, in September, they will finalize this. And I think between now and September is when all the countries are supposed to agree to give them the authority. I apologize for my voice tonight. I've got I should have took a sinus pill. Had a lot of allergies this year, a lot of dust. Okay. The other way that Satan is being very busy is the term debanking. Have you ever heard that? Of the term debanking? Okay. You know what banking is, you know, everybody banking. Well, debanking is when your lending institution puts you in the position that if you don't do this, we're not going to loan you money. And what it is, it used to be they could do that if your business wasn't good or, you know, the market's bad or whatever. Now they're bringing all this social governance into play. And I'm not talking about your small banks, you know, hometown banks. These are the big boys. 19 U.S. representatives accused J.P. Morgan of it here at home. And what it is, you've heard us talk about the ESG before, the social governance thing. Well, that's what the banks are doing, and they're doing it. You need to watch the big banks. They're the ones that's doing it right now. They're telling a company, if you don't do, that's one reason you're seeing these companies come out and do this stuff on this transgender stuff and everything. Don't kid yourself. They're under, you know, in some cases you got to feel sorry for them. Company needs the banking, but to keep getting their banking, they've got to do this ESG stuff. And people are saying, here in states anyhow, are saying enough's enough. We'll talk about the boycotts here in a minute. So stop and think about what's going on. Don't kid yourself. This is Satan controlling the whole thing. His little fingers are all over this. The other thing is, as far as it's going to be interesting, get ready for the aliens. That's getting ready to be headline news here next few days. And they're going to convince you. There's one guy that's a major respected researcher, and he says, yeah, he says, they've been here forever. He says, they're walking among us. And so anyhow, the NASA is supposed to be coming out with their research on aliens. So this should be interesting.
Project Blue Book.
Project Blue Book.
Blue Book.
That was the Air Force. Air Force had Project Blue Book at one time. This goes clear back into the 40s after the war, and that carried through. But I talked to pilots. I had knew many pilots very well, socialized with them all the time in the service. And I've asked almost every one of them, you ever see anything you didn't understand? Every one of them have. They see stuff all the time that doesn't make sense. And that's been 50 years ago since I was in the service. But yeah, they see stuff all the time. But it's going to be aliens of some sort, and it's going to be major news. I think it's setting us up. I think it's part of the end-time prophecies with the alien thing. And it's just going to be interesting to see how it unfolds, what they tried to tell us. More scientists now are claiming that AI will kill us. These guys are coming out of the wall that are researchers and stuff on this, that's been AI researchers. There's more and more of them coming on board saying, guys, this is dangerous. We need to do something about it. There was another major group this last week. Back to what we opened up with, talk about being careful what you see and hear. What happened last week? Stock market all of a sudden goes, zoop. You know why? I probably didn't pick it up. There was a AI-generated video on YouTube that showed the Pentagon was under attack, and the stock market reacted immediately. That's a prime example of how, and it was totally false. And it took a while for somebody to take the video that was on YouTube and show that it was fake, because the AI is so good at taking stuff. But yeah, it showed the smoke coming up in big columns, the video, the Pentagon had been attacked, and stock market fell. There people lost money over that, and it didn't stay there long. They got it corrected rather quickly. But it shows you primarily how you've got to be careful what you're watching and reading and believing. You just got to be so careful. We talked about that they're going to make the lame walk. The AI is. It's here. It's called a digital bridge. And the digital bridge is they go in and put implants in your brain, put implants in your back, and you walk again. And AI is controlling it. So it's here. Let's talk about here at home for just a little bit. It's interesting. This has been all over the news, and I know you guys are aware of this, but while we talk about climate change as a new world religion, wokeism is the new U.S. religion right now, without a doubt. Are you in on the boycotts? Anybody boycotting? You should be. Disney? Yeah. Budweiser? Target? Guess what the next one coming along is going to be? This will shock you.
Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A. Yeah. Been staunch conservative and religious, and now they're part of the DEI, your diversity, equity, and inclusion. Chick-fil-A, their president, CEO, come out just last day or two, said that they're going to join the crowd. We need to boycott and stand up, and hopefully, from what we've seen so far, that's going to happen. People should not go to Disneyland. Nope. People should not go to a Disney picture. Okay, you shouldn't buy Budweiser. You should not. It's just, as a Christian, it goes beyond that, okay? The Christianity part of it's the most important. But I tell you what, as an American with values, you should join these boycotts when these people are trying to force this stuff down our throats. They're getting ready to have a parents' night in Indianapolis, June the 6th, from 1 to 6 in the afternoon for children their parents are not allowed to attend? Stop and think about that. You know, we're starting to see some of it here in Connersville, that they're trying to get some of this stuff started. It was really funny. Target, they immediately started getting bomb threats. Okay, not when they put it. It came out that they had these displays. They hired a Satanist to design this stuff, right? If you followed the story, a Satanist was designing the clothes, and they were full out. It's all hit for this month because this is Gay Pride Month, and all this was hitting the stores, and they had these big displays up front and making a big deal about it. And then they got a backlash real quick. So what'd they do with the stuff? Moved it to the back of the store. Now that's a problem, and we'll discuss that here in a minute. But as soon as they moved the stuff to the back of the store, they started getting bomb threats from the LGBT people. Flooded the stores with bomb threats for moving it to the back. Now here's the problem. You know how communism works? You know how it has all through history when we battle communism? They'll come in and they will make inroads. Let's say, trying to use a real-time example, say China will come in and they're wanting to make inroads in the United States, and they start buying farmland. That's a hot topic right now. China or foreigners buying farmland. Okay, start buying farmland. I saw the other day where they own 386,000 acres of farmland in the United States now. All right, there's laws and stuff, and people are raising Cain about some of this. I don't know where it's going to go. But all of a sudden, China will say, okay, look, okay, yeah, we understand. You know, we'll keep the ground we got, and we won't buy anymore. Well, the way communism works and the way that works, and that's the same thing happened here, you take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. They stopped, but they had what they came after to begin with. Just like this thing with Target. LBGT stuff, the transgender stuff got put in there right up front to appease everybody. Oh, we'll move it to the back. It's still in the store. Okay? So what they did, they took 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Do the math. You are constantly gaining by taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. It's a little slower maybe what you maybe want to do, but it's the math's there. You're totally progressing all the time. That's exactly what happened here. It should be out of the store. If it's not out of the store, then you should not go to Target and buy anything. Okay? I mean, we've got to start making these. I'm really proud of the fact that it was funny, the first go this was the beer drinkers. But that's okay. The good old country boys, I think, got involved in this to begin with, and they've hurt Budweiser. Budweiser not even an American company anymore anyhow. They're owned by a Swedish company. But yeah, people and stuff have said, we're not buying it. People should not go to Disneyland. And any of these companies that are pushing this stuff shouldn't do business with them. Should not do business with them. Now, I got to ask you, are you guys an RMVE? I want to hand this handout out, and for those that are home, if you'll come, when you come in Sunday or Wednesday, these will be out front. This is your tax money at work, by the way.
No wonder they went up. They're using it.
Yeah. Okay. I'll wait to let everybody get these. Now, I apologize, this is not a great copy, but it's the best I could get off the grant. This was a U.S. grant to the University of Dayton, and they came up with a pyramid. And what this shows is how you become an RMVE, which is a radicalized, motivated, violent extremist.
Redneck.
You're a radicalized, motivated, violent extremist. And that's who's at the top of this pyramid. Now, but look how you get there. You start out being a Republican, NRA, CBN, you watch Fox News, you read the Heritage Foundation. If you're a Christian, you're at the bottom of that pyramid. All right? And then from there, that's your starting point. See, that's where you start getting radicalized, is that in that bottom part. The next step is you may belong to one of those groups above that, or you may, you follow them, and then you just follow up the pyramid. You want to really see this. As they say here on this, the smaller size of group is an increased level of extremism. And it's a pyramid of far-right radicalization. They have come up, your tax money paid for a study to show how far-right people get radicalized. And the number one thing is you're a Christian, is where you start with it. And you're a Republican, and you're a conservative, okay? Your tax money paid for this. Right over here at University of Dayton's in your back door.
Did they make one for the far left?
Oh, no. And see, that brings up, here brings up point here. Did you see where the two seniors got beat? That didn't get any coverage. No one in here saw it. Makes my point completely. Two guys my age were out in front of an abortion clinic in Baltimore and got attacked from the back severely. Look it up. You'd see the picture of these guys. They were, one of them's in the hospital, bloodied, beat. They beat that one guy to a pulp. And they were outside an abortion clinic praying. Yeah. That's all they were doing. Didn't make the news. Did not make the news. And guess what? Nobody's been charged with a crime. Of course not. Yeah. I think one of them was 70. I think one of them was 78, older than me. I think one was 72 and one 78. But yeah, look at it. When you go home, look that up. You ought to look at those pictures. But like I said, didn't make news. Nobody's talking about it. But yeah, I haven't seen, but it's interesting now, the Division of Homeland Security has put out a watch for this summer that we're going to have DVEs this summer. They're all coming up with all these acronyms now. You want to remember this one acronym because it's going to get used a lot. That RMVE, you are one. And the DVEs is domestic violent extremist. Now, in my mind, a domestic violent extremist would be the guy that beat up the two old boys out in front of the abortion clinic. But they're not going to approach it that way. So, just...
Who are they then?
Huh?
Who's these people supposed to be?
Us again.
Oh.
Yeah, domestic violent extreme. They, the guys that, most of the guys that, where that came out of was the January 6th riot that they had in Capitol. That's where they started calling about DVs, domestic violent extremists. You're going to start hearing these acronyms, I think, all the time. I really do.
Did they not also put out a warning that the churches should expect to be attacked more this summer?
On who?
The Homeland Security.
Who's going to be attacked more?
Oh, churches.
All churches, yeah. Question was, is there, Division of Homeland Security did put that out that churches could expect to have more attacks.
Right.
Yeah. So the persecution of the Christians is going to accelerate drastically. And here's the thing back. We talked about that a little bit in here before. We're starting to see the tearing apart of the United States into regional areas that like-minded people live in, is the best way to put it. That's happening. This thing of part of Washington State becoming part of Idaho's moving. They're actually moving ahead on that. I saw a map where there was a question about separating this one county up there in Washington State. Part of the eastern part of Washington State looks to be seceding from Washington State, and they're going to become part of Idaho. And it's because the people in eastern Washington are totally opposite of the ones in Seattle and Vancouver and out on the West Coast. They don't want to live with them anymore. So we're going to see more and more of that. You know, I pointed out here a couple weeks ago that so many students now, when they go to select a college, is picking a college in an region that is like them. Yeah, you're going to see more of that.
Same with businesses,
Yeah, businesses, same way.
doing the same thing.
What are they gonna do about all these people, whoever they are, attacking the churches and stuff?
Well, the question is, what are you going to do with the people attacking the churches? It'll be up to local prosecution to do it. And the problem has been so far, if you go, for instance, take these two guys here. If these two guys that got beat up had by any way attacked the abortion clinic with a rock or something like that, they immediately would be subject to Department of Justice coming down on them. Versus if someone attacks a church, we talked about that in here a few months ago. I forget the numbers, but out of all the church attacks this last year, which there's been quite a few, and abortion clinic attacks, they prosecuted everybody they could on the abortion clinics, and they haven't done hardly anything with the churches. And it's because that's what the federal government wants now. You bring down the wrath of the Department of Justice on you like that, if you're going against these transgenders and the abortion clinics, immediately. It's a hate crime. Right now it's a hate crime. And you're going to get hammered. The thing of it is, and I think a lot of the homosexual community feels this way. They are fed up with this transgender stuff. They do. Majority of them do not. They feel that it's taken away from their cause, and it has. And the thing of it is, most people look at this transgender stuff as child abuse. It's plain and simple, it's child abuse. You can't call it anything else. And so, I don't know who we were talking to the other day. I don't think we talked about it in here, but my comment is now that if someone brings that to me, if I'm talking against this transgender stuff, they say, well, why you hate those people? And no, I don't hate the people. I don't hate anyone. But why do you support child abusers? Is the question to ask back to that. You know, I'm not saying I hate anybody. I don't. But I really question, why are you supporting child abuse? That's a good way to shift the argument back the other way.
What's going on with our local libraries? Have you figured that out yet?
I haven't heard any more on the local library story, but what happened or what's going on there. But we need to keep our ears tuned to it, and if it occurs, we should make a statement. You know, as a church.
Are you talking about that story hour?
Yeah. Haven't heard any more about it.
I'm just trying to figure out why any parent would take their child to that. I just don't understand that at all.
Yeah, that's a great question. Why, the question was, or like Charlotte said, she doesn't understand why a parent would take their kids to a story hour or something. And I think the question should be asked that parent, why are you abusing your child? And that's exactly what they're doing. But, okay, the parents that would take your child to something like that is a product of the indoctrination that's been going on for the last few years in the schools. It's plain and simple. They believe I know it's hard to imagine, but these people, Charlotte, I've watched them online. They honestly believe, there are parents that honestly believe that their child should and has the right to determine their own sex. They believe that.
Yeah.
That's why they take the kids to it. They honestly buy into and believe that. And the reason they do that is because they've been indoctrinated in schools and colleges over the last generation that that's the way it is.
So you mean it's the parents that have been indoctrinated
Yes.
and are
Yeah.
now therefore?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, so you watch the sequence. That's why it's so important on these story hours and keeping stuff out of the schools, is because you take a child to something like that and the child says, oh, wow, I didn't know that. Mommy, can I be a boy? I mean, that's exactly how it's going to happen. And then the mommy's response is, well, sure, hon, we can do that. We'll help you. That's exactly what's going on. And it's all back to the indoctrination of our children. So,
But it even goes further than that. It goes right back to the original point that Richie's been making about being spiritually aware. Because the same as before I was saved, I didn't realize some things were so awful until my eyes were opened. And so we have to see this in that way, in that perspective too, that these are people that are still blind
Right.
to the truth. And so it's still our job to witness, show them the light,
And pray.
and help them come out of this darkness, because they are honestly thinking they're being good parents
right.
because they're blind to the truth.
Yeah, Roberta's
So-
exactly right. It goes back to the Bible tells us people will be blind
Yes.
and to this. And it's our responsibility to try to bring in the light on that situation to where they're no longer blind to it.
And that's the core for everything
Right.
that's happening. And for all of these people that are involved in all of these things, when we're standing back going, oh, that's awful, and they're thinking they're doing the right thing, and so that's why they're fighting with us, because they think they're doing the right thing, when we need to be saying, you know what, we need to show them the light. And that's the only way it's going to change, because they are blinded to the truth. They're not spiritually aware.
Right.
That's the whole core.
Right. There is the other thing, carry on a little bit here. It kind of ties, I'll jump over to this one here. Anyone know what sologamy is? SOLOGAMY, sologamy? It's a new thing. You marry yourself. You actually, now listen, this is for real. I'm not making this up.
Of course not. It's
Sologamy is marrying yourself, and people are actually setting up a ceremony with a minister of some sort with a full-length mirror, have all their friends there, they have an actual wedding, and they marry themselves in that mirror. You think times aren't crazy?
That's how far out.
Hey, it's far out, but I'm not making this stuff up. This is real.
You can't
This
make
is
it
real.
up.
Okay, we talked about AI there a little bit. There is a Senate bill by, I think it's a Democratic senator by the name of Bennett. I can't remember where he's from. He might be Minnesota. They're going to form a new federal agency to be an enforcer for AI and social platforms. It's the government's step to, now remember, the key word here is enforcer. Yeah, they're going to enforce this stuff on a federal level, and they're going to make a new federal agency to do that. Okay? That's coming. Some little side notes here, and then we'll finish up here in a few minutes. There is I can't remember what this acronym is, called CLAP, C-L-A-P. It's in Venezuela. But what struck me on this, I was reading this. I track Venezuela news because main reason Iran's so involved in Venezuela now, and Russia too. Russia always has been. but Iranians. Remember I told you at one time there was airplanes of household goods flying out of Iran and going to Venezuela. And that's their outlet if they do lose control in Iran, if they're biggies over there, they're going to end up in Venezuela. Venezuela is, and I told you also, I remember relaying that Iran has provided Venezuela with drones that can reach the United States. Like I said, Iran's a big leader in drone production now. They're getting really good at this stuff. They have been supplying Venezuela with drones that can reach southern United States. So I track Venezuela news. Well, anyhow, this last week I came up and talked to this CLAP, and what it was, CLAP down there is where the government hands out food to their people. And we're doing a lot of that here. We're handing a lot of food out and have been ever since, the pandemic hit. Well, Venezuela's been doing that, but now they've kind of changed it a little bit to where for you to receive food, they have to be able to track you. That'll be here. Yeah, that'll be the thing next year, is that if you're going to go and pick up food at like Gleaners or Handout or something, you're probably going to have a card that's going to be read, and that information is going to be transmitted. Venezuela's doing that to track their people right now, is what they're doing. They'll do the same thing here. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
Anybody know who Tara Reid is? Tara Reid's the lady that claimed Biden sexually attacked her here about, 20 years ago or something like that? Well, guess what? She moved to Russia for protection. She doesn't feel safe here anymore. And I don't blame her. I don't blame her at all. That was just a tidbit I couldn't help throwing out. Talking about Biden a little bit, it appears, I keep thinking, this is Doug Howard talking, I keep thinking that one reason Biden has been given so much to Ukrainians is that Ukrainians got dirt on him big time, because this Bursama thing with his son Hunter and all that. Well, the FBI, they had a document, they were investigating Hunter Biden, and they have a document showing somehow how Bidens were involved with this Ukrainian business thing there, made about $10 million or something when he was vice president. Well, at first the FBI wouldn't even say a document existed. Well, they finally admitted under oath, I guess, the other day in a committee meeting. The head of the FBI says, yeah, we do have a document, but you can't have it.
Didn't they destroy it?
No, it's not
Oh, I thought they
destroyed.
destroyed it.
So I still think eventually things may come out to where Biden, on all this thing with the Ukrainian war, a lot of it's been involved that they've had dirt on him. And, so time will tell, but that's just me thinking out loud. We end up tonight with talking about some money. They keep trying to hide it, but the economy's getting worse by the day. And there's so much data. Germany officially is in full recession. That's not on the news. Part of it's due to, well, not part of it, a major part of it is the Ukrainian war, because they lost their gas supply. And you remember here back over the few months that, number one, the cost for people to heat this winter went up so much. And then there's been so many businesses closed in Germany because they don't have the energy. And that's going to be far worse this winter in Europe. But Germany's officially in recession. And we probably are too, but the figures, it's so fun, it's different. The paradigms on how we always measured recession do not apply in this situation for some reason. They keep saying inflation is screaming and everything's doing good, but at the same time, we have the most business bankruptcies in 24 years. That's not being reported. They're at twice the level right now they were last year. And there are 27 big debt companies that's filed bankruptcy. For example, Bed Bath & Beyond, big company, suckers filed bankruptcy. Yeah, they're out of business. I'm talking about Chapter 11 bankruptcies. There's not where they're doing a reorganizational. It's a Chapter 11 where they just dissolve everything. So bankruptcies are on the rise. It looks like the feds are going to raise interest rates again, and that's throwing fuel on the fire. And then the big thing, of course, this week was the debt crisis, debt ceiling, which is such a joke. They're going to come out. The Senate will pass that. The House passed it last night. Senate's going to pass it. They'll all be puffing their chests out and saying, "Look how we work together and everything." And there's no debt limit now for next 2 years, none. They just gave them a green light, print all the money they want to. They can just keep right on printing. It's just, it's really nothing. I mean, it does nothing. The thing at 3 more countries this week decided to use the Chinese yuan instead of the U.S. dollar to settle their debts. Two South American countries and one in Africa. That we talked about a month or two ago that's coming. They're taking the United States apart by doing away with the dollar. Sanctions, sanctions didn't work anyhow. I mean, look at Iran, look at Russia. This is interesting. They put a sanction on, you got to stop and think through this sometimes, that some of these people just amazing. They put a sanction on Russia. You can't buy Russian oil, right? Big deal. You can buy diesel fuel. So you know what Saudi Arabia did? They're selling their oil, at a good price, making tons of money. They're buying Russian diesel fuel at a discount and selling their own oil that they would be making into diesel fuel. Russia's making money. Saudi Arabia's everybody's making money, but we sanction them. You can't buy oil. I mean, it's just crazy. It's nuts, just nuts. It's just insane when you stop and think. We've got people running this country that don't have enough common sense to think things through, and they don't. But Bible prophecy, again, is being fulfilled in that these people, we're told that people will have blinders, just like Pharaoh. Pharaoh had blinders on. God made him stupid for a while to get done what he wanted done. Is basically what it amounts to. I mean, who in their right mind, if you'd been Pharaoh, couldn't read the writing on the wall and say, "I need to leave these people alone"? But he didn't, because God kept turning, making him hard-hearted. Well, it's the same thing. God had prophecy to fulfill the way he wanted things to go. He's doing the same thing now. All this stuff's happening and some of these people that we're defining as idiots, God's intentionally making them that way to fulfill what he needs to get done to bring things to a conclusion. That's my opinion. And prophecy is holding true right down the line. That's the only way to look at it.
Yeah.
You can't look at it any other way. There's no other explanation for this other than God. It's like Bishop likes to say all the time, but God, and he's right. That you see God's hand on all this, and just got a big chess game out here he's playing. Devil's trying to figure it out, and we know who wins the game. So, any questions on anything? Kind of rambled a little bit tonight, but appreciate everybody being here. It's interesting times, and it's just pay attention to Mideast again next few days. Things are going to, I think, it's going to light up based on just what we saw this afternoon. And it looks like Ukrainians are probably going to have a long night tonight. So need to keep the innocent people in your prayers, because there's a bunch of them that are innocent and they're just trying to live their life and stay home, and it's being taken down around them. The unfortunate part, we're part of it.
The Canadian prepper, did you ever watch him?
No.
I watched it for the first time last night, but anyway, he had this map and was showing these Russian, what are they, fighters, whatever, that are, you know. But he said that when you can see them on the map,
Mhm.
you don't have to worry about anything. It's when you don't see them, that's when things are gonna start happening.
Yeah.
Is
So.
that- do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's probably true. There's just so much information out there now because everybody's got access to these satellites and everything, and there's some military people that's watching this stuff really close. And what's our guy's name? The Monkey Works. He stays on top of this stuff. I don't watch him every day, but I see updates from him occasionally. It's and some of it just like today, somebody just saw a bunch of Russian bombers take off from the base, the bomber base, and a bunch of them, and they're headed somewhere. So don't know where, but we'll probably know here in a few hours because it's not very long from the base they take off from over into Kiev and over in middle of Ukraine. It's a short flight, so they can get over there and do their dirties and get back. But anyhow, it's interesting. The Ukrainian thing, I think Russia's going to really put the squeeze on. There was another excursion of some sort of Ukrainian terrorist, or I don't want to call them terrorists, Ukrainian guerrillas that we'll talk about that just for a session here. In Ukraine was part of Russia. Historically, Eastern Ukraine was Russian. Those are Russians that live here today. There are a group of Russians that are anti-Putin that live in Ukraine. And they've been operating kind of as a guerrilla band along the border between Ukraine and Russia, slipping into the country and doing things. And there was a major excursion yesterday, I believe. And but all they're doing is they're just smacking a mad dog. And, he's showing them how he can respond. And he's got the upper hand. So that's a bad thing. But there's a lot of blood being spilt. Trump's right on one thing. Trump says if he was president, he'd have the war over in 24 hours, and I believe he would. Russia doesn't want to go any further than they are, but they keep getting smacked. And when they get smacked, they're going to respond. Russia wants a demilitarized zone between them and NATO. That's what it all goes back to. We promised to do that. We broke the promise. And that's still just what he wants. He wanted the Russian people back that live in Ukraine because they voted, those one districts that voted that time, and I think it was probably illegal, or it wasn't an induced election that was controlled by Russia. Those people want to be part of Russia. They're Russians.
Is that largely the part that they've taken over?
Yeah, it was. That's where he initially moved. And since that time, as long as they would give him a DMZ in between him and NATO, Putin would quit. But they keep smacking him. They think they can defeat him for some reason.